launched a nationwide crackdown. More than 100 suspected fighters have been killed. The Pakistani government is pointing the finger at its neighbor, Afghanistan. Islamabad accuses Kabul of not doing enough to go after armed groups which launch attacks in its territory. Well, since the bombing at the shrine, Pakistan has closed 2 of its border crossings with Afghanistan. It's demanding the government in Kabul takes action against 76 fighters it says are hiding in the country. Pakistan has also fired rounds of artillery shells across the border. The Afghan government has summoned Pakistan's ambassador in protest. Let's take a closer look at one of those armed groups we mentioned earlier, Jamaat al-Ahrar. Well, it's a splinter group of the Pakistani Taliban that took shape in 2014. The breakaway faction is based in the border region between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Jamaat al-Ahrar has launched multiple attacks targeting civilians, security forces and religious minorities. In March last year, it targeted an amusement park in Lahore during Easter celebrations, killing more than 70 people. In August, the US State Department put Jamaat al-Ahrar on its list of specially designated global terrorist groups. Jamaat says it's fighting for the establishment of an Islamic State in Pakistan. It's not pledged allegiance to ISIL, but has voiced its support for the armed group. Relations between Pakistan and Afghanistan have long been strained. When the Soviet troops invaded Afghanistan in 1979, Pakistan, along with the US, backed the Mujahideen groups fighting the communist regime in Kabul. In 1997, the Taliban seized control of Afghanistan, and Pakistan recognized and supported the armed group as the legitimate government. But after the 9/11 attacks and the US invasion of Afghanistan, Pakistan backed the international coalition and provided support for the US-led operation. Now, when the US installed Hamid Karzai as the Afghan leader, tensions remained between Kabul and Islamabad. Amid accusations, Pakistan was still backing groups opposed to Karzai's government. And more recently, there's been renewed tension along the border, which has long been disputed. Well, let's bring our guests into the show now. We have in Islamabad, Ayaz Wazir, former Pakistani ambassador to Afghanistan. And in Kabul, Davood Moradian, Director General of the Afghan Institute for Strategic Studies. Welcome to the show, both of you. If I could start with Davood, what do you make of the suggestion or accusation Afghan authorities are not doing enough, maybe even turning a blind eye to these sorts of groups operating in the border area simply to have more leverage over Pakistan?
I think there are 2 discourses here. One is that do we want to win a debate, a scoring point between Afghanistan and Pakistan and blaming each other's, or really we want to have a convergence of view and fight terrorism jointly together. So if the first choice is to win the debate, really neither the people of Afghanistan nor the people of Pakistan are ready to witness a debate between Afghanistan and Pakistan, who is to blame. But the question is that what we need to do as Afghanistan and Pakistan to fight this existential threat jointly. Unfortunately, the reaction that we saw from Pakistani military indicate that it is mainly interested in business as usual, and by distracting people's attention from the enemy that both Afghanistan and Pakistan are facing and pointing the finger at Afghanistan. We all know Afghanistan is a victim of terrorism, and in fact, we are the front line against terrorism. And what we saw in Pakistan last week, we see it on a daily basis in Afghanistan. Therefore, when it comes to complain about terrorism and being a victim of terrorism, everyone would recognize that Afghanistan as the most important and affected victim of terrorism. But again, it is not about the victimhood of Afghanistan. The question is that how Afghanistan and Pakistan can fight jointly in this menace of terrorism together.
Now, let me take one point you mentioned there too, Ayaz, in Islamabad. Isn't it true that Afghanistan has itself fallen victim, Afghan forces, to fighting the very groups which have also targeted the Pakistani side of the border. Only on, I think, Thursday, 17 Afghan troops killed in a clash in Nangarhar. Is it fair for Islamabad to put all the blame on the government in Kabul?
Well, we both are victim of terrorism, no doubt about it. Afghanistan, poor country, is fighting against terror for the last so many years, for decades now. And Pakistan since 9/11, and we both have given enough of sacrifices in every respect. But I agree with Mr. Muradian that there is no point in accusing each other. The effort should be that how can the two countries join hands to get rid of this menace. If it is in Afghanistan, it causes problem to Pakistan. If it is in Pakistan, it causes problem to Afghanistan. The two are closely linked in every sense. It has to be, the menace has in fact increased so much that I don't think it will be possible only for the Afghan government to control it. But the only concern that one has is that since in Afghanistan the sole superpower is sitting with the air power, which used to hit the tribal area of Pakistan with drone and could accurately hit some of the targets, why couldn't that force be used against the targets which the Pakistani government tells the Afghan government and pinpoints that these are the people or places where from the claim has been laid that they have done it. So that is my personal concern, that if the Afghan government, I don't take it that serious because they are in trouble, they are fighting with their own Afghani brothers Taliban, and they have no, with due apology to my friend in Kabul, no control all over the country, but the NATO forces and the American forces sitting in Kabul, they have the resources to reach to any position, any place in Afghanistan and could take care of that. I wish they had done that. Pakistan certainly is concerned, would not like to escalate.
All right, let me distill a point out of where we've reached so far in this discussion and take this point to Dawood in Kabul. Both our guests on the show talking about the need for joint action, and Ayaz pointing out, in his opinion, that more could have been done by some of the international forces to target what Pakistan sees as a threat. Yet that hasn't happened. Why? Is there, regardless of what people like you talk about, is there really a lack of political will on both sides to target militant groups that operate on either side of the border? I mean, for decades, you know, or for years at least, Kabul authorities in Kabul have been complaining and blaming Pakistan as being the source that has nurtured and supported groups opposed to the government in Kabul, right?
I think joint action requires a number of conditions, which unfortunately those conditions do not exist between Afghanistan and Pakistan. The most important thing is, do we have a shared understanding and definition of terrorism between Afghanistan and Pakistan? The question, unfortunately, is no. For Afghanistan.
Okay, so what are the conditions that are missing here? Both countries talk about a threat that they want to confront. What is missing if you both see eye to eye on a threat?
It is that we believe that there is in Pakistan the question of differentiation of terrorism into good and bad terrorism. And if I can be more specific, as far as the Pakistani military thinking and policy is concerned, we have two types of Talibans. Good Taliban which are the Afghan Talibans, and the bad Taliban, which are Pakistani Taliban. For that reason, unfortunately, Pakistani military mindset and policy do not allow Pakistan to tackle both Afghan Taliban and Pakistani Talibans. For Afghan Talibans, they provide sanctuary. I give you a recent interview by Pakistani Foreign Secretary on this last Thursday, which described Taliban as a refugee and as migrant on the soil of Pakistan. Therefore, as long as we differentiated between terrorism and categorize them into good and bad terrorism, unfortunately, we would not have a joint action against our common enemy.
Okay,
so the most important thing is that
let me take that
both
point.
Kabul and
I'll come back to you,
come.
Dawood, if I may. Let me
Okay.
just take that first point you made to Ayaz. It's a common accusation that Pakistan supports the Afghan Taliban, even though it fights the Pakistani Taliban, even the accusations going back to the mid-90s that the Taliban was a creation of ISI, the Pakistani intelligence. How do you respond to that?
Well, the Taliban was a creation not of the ISI, but a creation of us all together, if you permit me to say so. If we look at the Afghan situation at that time, at every 10 kilometers, there was a warlord sitting and controlling the area. The Mujahideen couldn't control the Afghan internally, and that led to the uprising of the Taliban. But let's not go into that. It's a known fact that Pakistan recognized the Taliban government in Afghanistan and had extended diplomatic support to them. No doubt about it. They came and they.
Don't we need to go into that to explain or to understand whether the Pakistani policies today have changed? Is Pakistan still viewing the Afghan Taliban as a potential asset, if not ally?
Well, Pakistan, let me respond to my friend Muradian's first objection that Pakistan is still maintaining good and bad Taliban differentiation in the Taliban or in the militancy fighting against it. Pakistan has said loud and clear that there are no good or bad Taliban. Every militant or anyone creating problem in Pakistan or in Afghanistan or in any country is a militant. And Pakistan has taken action. Zarb-e-Azb was the biggest operation undertaken in North Waziristan, which everybody demanded of Pakistan. We were reluctant, but finally we went after them and we dislodged them. But the complaint that today our authorities had is that when we launched the Zarb-e-Azb operation, the militants started crossing over into Afghanistan. I wish the US, NATO and the Afghan forces had stopped them and arrested on their side. But that is another issue. I'll come back to the Taliban leadership here in Pakistan. The Pakistani advisor on foreign affairs to the Prime Minister has said it in his address in the US that, well, the leadership is in Pakistan, but the fighting force of the Taliban is certainly within Afghanistan. They do not need any fighting force from Pakistan to cross over. Only the leadership is here.
Right.
Yes, that I am not denying. But that is known to the Afghan government, and the Afghan government has accepted that fact. And the proof is the discussion in Murray when they came to talk.
You made a good point there. Let me take it to Dawood and ask the question the other way around, because the accusation is being made to Afghanistan. Why not target some of these bases or areas on the border where allegedly the Taliban have relocated, the Pakistani one too? Pakistan has presented Kabul with a list of 76 people. Why not apprehend them and hand them over, or at least take justice against them, or steps against them?
I am pleased my good friend Ambassador Ayaz has acknowledged that the leadership of Taliban are located and based in Pakistan. Therefore, I think the question is that what we need to do to convince the Pakistani military to say goodbye to leadership of Pakistan and join the peace process in Afghanistan. Again, back to your question. If you follow the recent report by U.S. Agency SIGAR about situation in Afghanistan, the report says that 40% of the Afghan territory are not within the control of the Afghan government. And 40% of those areas happen to be alongside the Afghanistan and Pakistani border.
Even so, Dawood, I guess Ambassador Ayaz's point is, couldn't the international forces, perhaps at the request of the Afghan authorities, using drones, using whatever means they have, target some of these areas that Pakistan sees as a source of threat?
But we have learned from both Afghanistan and Pakistan that aerial bombardment is not sufficient to eliminate terrorists. It needs a political decision, political policy, which unfortunately is not forthcoming. So back to my answer, that the area that now is contested between Afghan government and the Taliban happen to be the area that is the Pakistani terrorists have been located. And if I want to say, and I do not want to sound sarcastic here, the best people who can take hand over those people are the Afghan Taliban who are in charge of those areas. Therefore, Afghan government, unfortunately, is not in full control of that area that TTP have been resettled here. Again, what I want to say is that, again, it's not scoring the point and winning the debate. It is coming to a mutual understanding between Afghanistan and Pakistan. I can assure my Pakistani colleagues that in Afghanistan you wouldn't find anyone, even one person who says that the Pakistani Taliban are resistant or they are good terrorists. There is a consensus in Afghanistan which the view all terrorists, including Afghan Taliban and Pakistan,
let's move the
Taliban
discussion
as terrorists. The
along
problem
the
in
mutual
Afghanistan
understanding
is
point, if we could.
is the capacity of the Afghan government.
All right, let's move the discussion on a little bit. Ambassador Ayaz, doesn't Dawood have a point when he says, you know, these are areas that are not entirely under the control of the Afghan government? Is there really a military solution? I mean, you talk about drone attacks, but it's been years of drone attacks and they haven't destroyed any group, as far as we can tell, on either side of the border. In fact, if you read what a lot of human rights groups have mentioned, that they've just caused a lot of civilian casualties, deaths, and even resentment. Is there really a military solution to this problem?
No, I agree with you that is not a solution, and let me tell you that I was one amongst the Pakistanis who were against the drone attacks in Pakistan. I do agree that the aerial attacks or through the barrel of the gun, the problem cannot be solved. The solution lies in political dialogue, but unfortunately the political dialogue has somehow been stopped. I am avoiding to go into points where my dear, beg your pardon?
Who do you blame for, why is the political dialogue being stopped? Who's to blame for that?
Well, I'm not blaming anyone because the Afghans have so many points raising fingers against us, and we have so many points to raise our fingers against Afghanistan. I'm not saying that the fault lies totally with them or with us. There is a big trust deficit. We have to address that trust deficit. Until and unless that trust deficit is addressed, we would be stuck with this problem of accusing each other. So for that, we have to take steps. I mean, the leadership of the two countries, the political leadership of the two countries, they have to take steps to continue their dialogue, irrespective, God forbid, if there happens again an incident like in Seven Sharif in Pakistan or in Afghanistan, let that not stop our discussion between our leadership, between the two sides, because without that it cannot be. We have seen for the last so many years, so many decades, through the barrel of the guns you cannot solve the problem. Even within the country, leave alone solving it with your neighbor or with another country.
All right, that's an interesting point. Let's take it back to Kabul. Dawood, what can build the trust deficit between Kabul and Islamabad after so many years of distrust?
I think I agree with my Pakistani colleagues about the need for dialogue between Afghanistan and Pakistan at all levels, particularly between the leadership of the two countries. But in order to facilitate such a dialogue, both sides, they have to take a number of confidence-building measures. And for us in Afghanistan, consistently, we have a very simple benchmark of confidence building. Right now, Afghanistan has embassy in Pakistan and 4 consulate general in Pakistani cities, including in the city of Quetta. So in the city of Quetta, most people know that there happen to be the leadership of the Taliban is located, which is known as the Quetta Shura. Now, the benchmark for us is that the Pakistani authority, they have to choose either Afghan embassy or Afghan Taliban mission in Pakistan. They cannot engage both with the Afghan government at the same time with the Afghan Taliban as a parallel government here. Therefore, as long as this parallel approach continues, I don't think we will have a fruitful dialogue between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Therefore, I want to emphasize
Doesn't there
that
need to be some outreach to both sides of the conflict, though, in Afghanistan, if anyone is to mediate a peaceful resolution to the problem, to the fight in your country, though? How do you respond to that, Dawood?
I think there is enough maturity both in Afghanistan and Pakistan to have a mutual and direct bilateral dialogue. But there is a question of verification. Pakistani, rightly, they have some accusation about Afghan government. And I think a third party can verify those accusations and counter-accusation. And we say that the leadership of the Taliban are located in Pakistan, and our Pakistani colleague says the leadership of Pakistani Taliban are located in Afghanistan.
Okay, we've just got about, forgive me, Dawood, but we've got about a minute left, so I want to give Ayaz a chance to come back in. We've got about 1 minute. Your thoughts on that Pakistan has to change its sort of parallel approach to both the government and the Afghan Taliban?
Well, no doubt we have recognized the government in Afghanistan. We consider it's the government there, but the government in Afghanistan have accepted the fact that Taliban is a reality, and they have come all the way to Murray to talk to them. And they have gone all the way to Qatar to discuss matters with them. We are simply facilitating. I'm not denying that the Taliban leadership are not here. We are trying to facilitate a dialogue between the Taliban and the Afghan government. They should decide whatever way they want. It is their country. They both are Afghans. Whatever solution they agree upon, we are not dictating terms to any. But the fact that the Taliban are a reality, they are Afghans, they cannot be wished away, they cannot be eliminated. So the government in Afghanistan have to find a way to talk to them, to engage.
All right, we'll have to leave the discussion there because we are out of time. Let's thank our guests very much, Ayaz Wazir and Dawood Muradian. And thank you too for watching again. You can see the show anytime if you head over to our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go over to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle there is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Sami Zaidan, and the whole team here for now.